Alright, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going over a Spellshot Grvaeborn build. I'm sure there's a ton of these out there, but I just kind of wanted to make one. So this build is going to focus on spells, casting spells, spell damage. Um, I'm sure you've seen these builds already. So let's just go right into it here. So the spell shots class feat is going to allow us to get stacks of spell weaving, which increase our spell damage per stack. So this is really good because this is what we want. We want spell damage on this build. So first of all, we're going to go Ambihextrous, which is going to allow us to cast spell in each hand. You're going to want to max out magic bullets. This is going to allow us to convert 45% of our spell damage into our gun damage. So when you're in that spell cooldown kind of phase, which you really shouldn't be very often, if at all, with this build, you're going to be able to do some damage. On spell, I maxed out spell sniper because I wanted the critical hit chance, because this is, if you critical hit one of these spells, you can insta kill any of the elites in the game pretty much. But I mean, you can kind of split this between the two if you want to reload faster. Although I don't really think that's needed. I just kind of threw 1 point over here. So this one, that can really be up to you. Although I recommend spell sniper. We're going to come down now to Fauna Mana, max this out definitely because this is going to give us spell cooldown rate, which with this being a spell build, that should be self-explanatory. We definitely want this. I have a point in a mage armor here, although you do not really want mage armor. So we'll come back to that in a second. Next, we're going to go Glass Cannon, and Glass Cannon is going to make it to where our shield no longer recharges, but we're going to get 30% spell damage. So this is why I have mage armor on, because this, with Glass Cannon, this is the only way to recharge your shield. You're going to get 10% every time you get a stack of spell weaving, which spell weaving is achieved by reloading or casting a spell. When I get into the gear side of things, I'll kind of explain to you why you probably want to run this for a while, and then when you should actually respec and take this off. And I mean, that's if you wanted to put a point somewhere else. Then we're going to come down to the high thread count, which is going to allow us to get 3 more stacks of spell weaving to increase our total from 5 to 8, which is an 80% damage, spell damage increase when we have all stacks going. That's really all I recommend doing on Spellshot side. Now coming to Grvaeborn, we are going to max out Essence Drain, which again, this is spell cooldown rate. We're going to also max out Dark Pact, which is going to give us dark magic damage increase, which this ties directly into Stain of the Soul, which is going to allow our spells to deal bonus dark magic damage. So we're getting extra dark magic damage from the already dark magic damage we're getting here. Next, we're going to come down to Ascension. We're going to max this out. This is going to increase our maximum health and our spell damage per stack, we're at 6% per stack. So this is a kill skill. So each time you get a kill, this is going to go up. This could be up. This is going to be maximum 10 stacks. So you're going to get 60% more spell damage and 60% more health. So you're getting the damage that we need, and you're going to get some survivability out of this one as well. We're going to come down here to Lord of Edges, where you're going to increase damage dealt and damage reduction to lower your health. So again, this is going to help the survivability because we're going to be going Glass Cannon with no shield recharge. And this is a good flat, damage increase as well. This is going to be all damage instead of just being spell damage. This is going to increase everything. Now, I don't know if this skill is kind of bugged or not, because it does say you get increases the lower the health, and it tells me that our current effect is 25%. Although when I'm low on health and I come in here and check this, it still says 25%. So I'm not sure if that's bugged out or what. Next, on Blast Gap, I rolled 4 out of 5 here. You can definitely roll 5 out of 5 on this if you want. I went 4 out of 5 on it. This is going to allow us to, whenever we deal some spell damage, there's a chance that we're going to create an elemental explosion, which is going to deal ability damage of the spell's elemental type to nearby enemies. When this thing procs, you can take out an entire mob if you have a powerful enough spell on. So I recommend at least 3 or 4 points out of this. And then finally, we're going to come down to the capstone, which is going to allow us to get all of our kill skills when we activate, when we cast a spell, which is pretty good too. So into the gear that I have, this gear can definitely be better. This is kind of not super optimized. But anyway, so we're going to start with the spells, which is probably the most important part of this build. So we're going to start with the Buffmeister. This, I'm going to go ahead and throw this out right away. This spell is bugged, and it will be getting nerfed. So that's a lot of builds online right now are using this Buffmeister, and I see the only issue I kind of see with some of these builds is that when they do nerf this, those builds kind of are going to fall apart a little bit because they're basing the whole build around this one spell. This build here, you're going to be okay with or without this, honestly, but it never hurts to use it while it's bugged out. So what's happening with the Buffmeister is when you use Ambihextrous on the Spellshot to get 2 spells, you're going to place this in your right hand. It has to be the right hand. It won't work on the left. So place this on the right. And what's going on with this is whatever spell you have in your left hand, the damage is getting transferred directly to the weapon, which is not supposed to happen. And I think this is a problem in one of the older Borderlands where there was weapon merging happening and it wasn't supposed to be happening. So the damage on this is 1244 times 4, which is like 5,000 just about. And going up to my live wire for an example, with 167 damage, what's happening here is it's going to throw that almost 5,000 damage onto the weapon and make this weapon do almost 5,000 damage per shot base. Of course, and that's not factoring in our 45% spell damage converts to gun damage, so it's going to make that way more than 5,000. So that's the bug there. It's transferring the spells damage directly onto the weapon, and it also increases the spell by a lot too. So number one, you want a Buffmeister for your right hand. I recommend a Dark Magic Buffmeister. I personally haven't been able to find one yet, but the Dark Magic one is going to allow you to deal tons of Dark Magic damage, which is going to give you a ton of healing, which is going to work perfectly because you're not going to be having your shield recharged. Now, earlier I had mentioned that I recommend taking this point away because it's not going to be needed. Honestly, you can throw this point wherever else you want. But until you are able to get your hands on a Dark Magic Buffmeister, I recommend keeping that because it's going to be hard to heal without that, especially since the shield we're using, which we'll get to in a second. So, Dark Magic version of this, definitely the best one. That damage on the top, I'm not really sure if that matters a whole lot. It seems to me kind of like the higher it is, the better this Buffmeister does. So real quick, what the Buffmeister is going to do is, so here's our normal kind of movement speed here. Here's our normal fire rate, on this particular weapon. This is a live wire. And when we activate our Buffmeister, it's going to give us a lot more movement speed. As you can see, fire rate's going to go up, reload speed's going to go up, and obviously the damage is going to go up by a lot as well. I've noticed that when I was using one of these that are 168 and 141, especially this one that's 141 here, it seems like the speed increase is not as much on that one. So I would definitely try to get this to a higher damage than as you can. I have seen all the way up to a friend of mine have one that he hits 203 on the damage, so you could definitely go over 185. I'm pretty sure they all last for 9.6 seconds. I have 3 of them, and they're all 9.6 seconds. I don't think they can roll with anything other than spell damage, but that's for our build. That's perfect because we're looking for spell damage on our build. Now the spell cooldown, that can actually be something different. As you can see on this Buffmeister, I actually have 2 spell charges on this one. Now the reason that I'm not using this one is because this one has the higher spell damage and the higher base damage. But if you can get your hands on a Dark Magic Buffmeister with 2 spell charges, that is absolutely insane, because what's going to happen here is you're gonna come into it, and then we're going to allow when the spell ends. So instead of when the spell ends, instead of you going into that cooldown that you would normally do, which is you pop your second one out as soon as it's over. So now you're going to keep that uptime way higher. And as you can see, the cooldown over there is actually going to hit right as this ends. We can immediately go right back into another run of this. So, and then this will almost time out perfectly just about. So as soon as this ends, and now we're only going to have, about probably 10 seconds to wait for that one to come back. So you're going to get 3. Yeah, there's the cooldown there. So you can see you're going to get 3 initial uses out of this before you have to wait for any cooldown whatsoever. So definitely recommend a 2 spell charge one if you can find one. Moving over now to the spell on your left hand. Now, for people that are trying to do Stabomancer builds, you're probably focusing on Stabomancer and Spellshot. You're probably wanting to go gun damage. So for those, all you really want to do here is make the base damage as high as you can. For this build, though, we're doing spells. So one of the most important things here is to make the base damage of the spell on the left hand as high as possible, because this is whatever the damage on this is, as I said it earlier, is going to determine how much damage gets applied to your weapon because of the bug. So you definitely want as high as you could possibly get right here, damage-wise. As far as what spell you want here, I like the simple cast, the quick ones, because of the fact that you're only getting 9.6 seconds. So you want to be able to get as many spells off as you can during that 9.6 seconds to maximize your DPS. This has 2 spell charges. I mean, you can get one with more than 2 spell charges. Like I said, that's even better. But personally, for me, I want as much DPS as possible, so I want to get as many spells off as I can. The triple ice spike is incredibly powerful, which I'll show you in a second when we go do some little demonstration of this. Really, 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 really powerful. But pretty much anything you want here, as long as the base damage is as high as possible. Moving on to the class mod now. Personally, I don't think the skill increases on the class mod matter too much. What you're really, really looking for here is you want your Spellshot power to be as high as possible, because what the Spellshot power being up is going to do is it's going to directly give us extra spell weaving damage. So that's why you want to even though we're speccing really heavily into the Grvaeborn here, we don't want the Grvaeborn power to be up, because we're not using the Demi-Lick, we're not using Dark Sacrifice, and we're not going to be using Reaper of Bones, nor the Dark Hydra damage, and the Blast Gap doesn't happen enough to try to focus solely on that anyway. So we really want to go with our Spellshot power, because it's going to just increase the extra spell damage, which is what this build is all about. So, like I said, for all of your gear, you're going to definitely want to try to go as high as you can on Spellshot. I think you can only roll Spellshot on the Amulet and the class one, I believe. But you definitely want to look for Spellshot power and all damage dealt. The reason we're looking for all damage dealt, aside from the fact that it just increases all of our damage, is that's the only way to make the Buffmeister better. Increasing your gun damage isn't going to increase the damage output that it allows this to give to your weapon. Increasing your spell damage isn't going to allow this to put any more damage onto the weapon other than what it says there. However, increasing all damage with one of these all damage dealt rolls here, that will allow this to be, let's see, that's 17.8% more than that 5,000 damage. So that's why you want all damage dealt. You want to try to roll this on all of your gear. I don't actually have it on my rings, because like I said, I just kind of threw this build together just today actually. So you definitely want to keep a lookout for all damage dealt. As far as the rings go, you're looking mainly for the spell damage to be as high as possible. There are some rings that are better than others. For example, this gesture ring here, which is going to give us, while ward is not full, effects are increased 100%. This is excellent because our ward will never be full, because it's not going to be recharging. So that is a really, really, really good ring to look out for. Just try to roll one that has all damage dealt on it if you can, but if not, I mean, the benefit of the increased effect by 100% is still going to do you a lot of good. The shield. Now, the shield here, going back to what I said earlier, I wouldn't recommend running a Cursed Wit until you get a Dark Magic Buffmeister, but you can. You're just going to have to spec into Mage Armor, because this is going to allow you to recharge your ward. The only downside about that is you're not synergizing too well with this when you're doing that, but it's definitely an option. But so any other shield would I personally like the full battery as a nice shield, because you're going to get you're going to sacrifice 25% of your shield to get 40% weapon damage, which is going to proc this because it's not going to be full, and then you're getting extra weapon damage on top of all the other amounts of damage this build has. But I mean, you could definitely run a Cursed Wit if you want to spec into Mage Armor. It's up to you. Cursed Wit, like I said, what's going to allow us to gain 17% damage reduction and 100% increased damage dealt to nearby enemies. As you know, the enemies are all up in your face a lot of the times, so this is a great. As far as the element, I don't think it really matters, just as long as it's a Cursed Wit. The Amulet, again, same thing on the Amulet that applies to the rings. There are certain amulets that are going to be better than others because of the legendary effect on them, but the main thing you want to look for is Spellshot power and all damage dealt. Again, this one has a pretty interesting effect here. When you cast a spell, reduce your remaining action skill cooldown by 20%. While your action skill is on cooldown, spell damage is increased by 30%. We don't have any action skill cooldown, which I'll get into that in a second. There's a lot of confusion about that. I'm going to clear that up in a minute. It says whenever you cast a spell, so that's going to initially, at least the way I'm reading this is, that's going to trigger all those effects. So I'm still trying to work out if we do get that 30% spell damage or not. However, like I said, never hurts to have that in case it doesn't work. I mean, if it does work. We're getting the Spellshot power and we're getting the all damage dealt, which is the two main important things here. So like I said, real quickly, I've just seen a lot of people on Reddit and stuff kind of get confused about this. When you use the ambidextrous action skill, even though this is an action skill, it is not going to be affected by any of the action skill bonuses in the game. It counts as a spell only. So what I mean by that is trying to raise your action skill cooldown is not going to affect how fast the spell comes back. All of the enchantments that say on action skill start, on action skill end, while action skill is active, those are not going to apply because this is a spell. It's not an action skill. A lot of people are getting confused because it's in the action skill slot, but it's not. You're getting no benefits from rolling action skill on anything. So just keep that in mind. So now, with all the gear kind of out of the way, weapons, one of the better things about this build is it's not going to lock you into a certain weapon type like a lot of them do. Basically, whatever you like to use is going to work here because you're getting such a massive damage increase right here. I mean, you can run a green or a blue weapon and still just murder everyone out. But I recommend personally either the Nightshade or the Livewire, or both. Just because these are just two of the strongest weapons in the game. The Nightshade. Okay. Okay. Anyway, now that he's done, so what we're gonna do is, let's say, like I said, with the Nightshade, you get this. You guys are familiar with the Sandhawk. You get this kind of Sandhawk type pattern right here. So which is really nice. The other elements that come in this Dahlia SMG here are gonna shoot a beam, and it's just not as good as the Cryo one. So I recommend that. That's going to be an insane damage amount, output amount. Also the Livewire, not bad as either, because of the fact that we're going to get this electric beam right here that fires out of the Livewire, And what that's going to do is that's going to actually arc to other enemies. So what I like doing is when you're in a chaos run and you come up to the obelisk, all the enemies are going to kind of be grouped around the obelisk down there. I'll pop out the live wire and just start firing into the mob down there with the Buffmeister going just to hit everyone. I mean, that's a good way to clear that mob out. Although you don't have to. Like I said, any weapon here is really going to be good. These are just the two that I would prefer. Melee weapon. Again, doesn't matter. We're not going to really be meleeing with this build. Although, if you do want to optimize this build even further, I recommend a Goblin Pickaxe. Just for the fact you're going to get a lot of movement speed. You're going to get more cooldowns. Because every time you pick up gold, you get a 5% increase in your cooldowns, your movement speed, your reload speed, and that stacks like 6 times. So I mean, that would definitely be one that you want to go if you want to optimize this build even further. But again, the enchant on the melee weapon matters more than the melee weapon itself, which brings us to the enchants now. The enchants you want to look out for are going to be, like I said, action skill active. Yeah, we're working on that, guy. Anyway, so like I said, you don't really on these action skills. These are going to do you no good. So what you want on your enchants, you're going to want the on spellcast enchantments because this build is all about spells. So man, pretty much anything like increased elemental damage is a really good enchant to have. On spellcast, increase frost damage. The reason I have this enchant on is because both elements are frost on these, which kind of brings me to a point I forgot to mention earlier. Not only does the Buffmeister, now I think this is actually intended, honestly, but not only are you going to get the damage applied to the weapon from the spell, you're also getting the element applied as well. So this is a electric, the live wire, but it's going to have frost damage because of the Buffmeister is going to throw frost damage on it as well. I think that's actually intentional. I don't think that's bugged. So that's why I have on spellcast increase frost damage by 30%. But like I said, you're going to want to run dark magic here. But whatever element is here, I mean, you can further enhance that by matching the element on this enchant. Another good enchant is going to be on spellcast, increase damage dealt by 15%. Yeah, that's a really good one because, again, we're going to spec straight into what I was talking about earlier with the all damage buffing the Buffmeister. So that's another good one to run. And then this one I have after getting a spell kill, gain a 50% chance to shoot an additional projectile for moderate duration. This one was just one that I was trying to roll. I was trying to roll dark magic damage, and I just happened to land on this and just kept it. But like I said, I mean, the enchants kind of, you're going to want to roll those kind of depending on what weapon you're using, what element your spell is. I mean, those are kind of going to be, you know, but you definitely want the increased damage dealt and the elemental damage for sure, because those are going to increase no matter what element you have. And then on this one here, just try to match this to whatever element you're using on your spells. So that's basically going to cover all of that. Now let's go. We're going to go Chaos 20 here. We're going to kind of go show you a little bit about what this build can actually do a little bit here. Alright, so what we're going to do is you're going to pop your... Oh, okay. Not sure what happened there. As you can see there, you just pretty much instantly kill the people. So now we're on a cooldown on it, so we're going to wait for that cooldown to come back. But, boy, this really started out bad, Anyway, you're going to pop this, and then you just absolutely shred that guy. You notice I actually did damage to him because he's so close. Now, what's happening there is something you really have to be careful with these Buffmeisters. I'm actually kind of glad that happened, because that's something I don't see people talk about when they're using these Buffmeisters. So I'm actually, like I said, I'm kind of glad that happened, actually. What happened there was I cast that Buffmeister while I was in the water. And for some weird reason, when you cast this while it's in the water, it's going to put a pool of whatever element it is in that water, and it's just going to instantly kill you. So you gotta, and I'm not sure if any other spells do this or not, or what, but that's definitely something that should be probably looked into. So yeah, avoid casting the Puffmeister while you're in the water, or else that's gonna happen to you every time. So you see here, I don't get that to happen. I'm free to walk through this water now, just murder these guys. So now, as far as, see, there you go again, we're getting this weird pool on the ground here, which doesn't make any sense. So that's just something to watch out for there. Also, as you can see, this right here is a good example of why you want the dark magic version of this spell, because you'll be getting a ton of healing. But anyway, so as far as the spell goes, I mean, the other hand, you can see it just absolutely murders people. It's basically a one-shot when you have the Buffmeister going. Now, I'm also going to kind of demonstrate too why this is a pretty safe build for even when the Buffmeister gets nerfed, all this spell damage. So I'm gonna shoot these guys without the Buffmeister. As you can see, it's just instantly killing them. I mean, you see there, it's just an instant kill. There's so much spell damage even without the Buffmeister on. So once this gets nerfed, you're still gonna be okay as far as the damage output on that goes. But like I said, just the damage output here is nuts with this Buffmeister on. Like I said, you know, this you add in the spell weaving stacks to this. I mean, you can see the cooldown's fast, so that's that. But so like I said, definitely this thing here being bugged out is really what makes most of these builds as high damage as they are. But like I said, a nerf is definitely going to come for this. There's no way that they're not going to nerf this thing. It's kind of like how the pipe bomb was on Borderlands 3 when it first released. It was really broken too. But like I said, this build is going to, I mean, once they nerf this, hey, this might even still be useful. I'm not really sure. I never actually used the Buffmeister until people learned that it was busted. But that's pretty much this build. Like I said, I kind of threw this build together in a hurry, which is why I didn't do too good demonstrating it there, because it's not optimized. But this right here should give you a pretty good foundation to kind of create your own build on this, really, which is what I personally like to do. I try to shy away from copying somebody's build directly, especially if it's like what a lot of these builds going on. This is probably one of the most popular builds in the game right now, running either Grvaeborn and Spellshot or Spellshot and Stab-O-Mancer with the Buffmeister. But like I said, you know, when you base your entire build off of a item or something that's glitched or bugged, when that finally gets fixed, you know, your build kind of falls apart a little bit. So that's why I try to do this, you know, to be as viable as possible, even without the Buffmeister. But this definitely helps. So that's going to be that, and I hope you guys enjoyed that.